Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video about a thing that I bought. So, I have wanted something like this for quite a while, this being the MSI Military Class 3 Big Bang Z77 MPower. So, yeah, this is a Z77 board. It is MSI's sort of overclocking focused Z77 board, and this one popped up on eBay for a decent price just for the board itself, but it also came with an i7 3770K and actually two kits of DDR3 RAM. So yeah, it was a pretty good deal. So I just went for it. The reason why I wanted to go for this is, like, one day I was on eBay and I saw how extremely cheap i5 2500Ks have gotten, and I was just like, how about I just get like a bucket of them and then just blow them up or something like that? Just like, I want to get more into CPU extreme overclocking, but I don't really want to do it with like my main test bench motherboards because I haven't done it yet really, and there's more things to go wrong on the motherboard than there is on a GPU when extreme overclocking, so I don't want to like risk my main test bench like my Apex or my Unify X for stuff like this. And I also just wanted a platform where like the CPUs are cheaper, where I can just like run them at high voltages and not really be too worried about it if I break it. And you know, LGA 775 is a platform that I have several CPUs, RAM kits, and motherboards for, but my main problem with 775 is like the motherboard you have matters quite a lot. And the ones that I do have are just kind of like I have one board that's kind of decent, but it's DDR2, and the DDR2 I have is just kind of shit. So like what happens is, like, if the CPU doesn't have a high enough multiplier, the limit I run into is actually just the RAM not being able to clock higher, because you overclock LGA 775 via FSB. So I was like, maybe I should just use some of those super cheap 2500Ks. I just need to find like an LGA 1155 board that can overclock them. So I went on the look for like Z67, Z77 boards. For my big surprise, Z67 basically doesn't exist. Or like currently, there were like basically no boards for sale. But Z77 had quite a lot of them. And yeah, so like when it comes to a board, I was gonna select it. Well, I mean, if there was a Z77X UP7 available, I probably would have gone for that, just because it's another one of those ridiculous gigabyte boards, and I love those. But those weren't available. What was available was actually 3 examples of this. One was just the board, one was just the board and a 3770K, and then the one I got was the board, 3770K and RAM, all for the same price. So, well, I got the one with the RAM. But there was also a Maximus Formula, the Z77 equivalent, and there was also some ASRock board that I don't actually know. That ASRock board wasn't actually like the highest end one they had. It just had a postcode and it had an okay looking VRM, so I was just like, maybe it's not too bad. And I went to ask around, like, okay, so like all of these cost about the same, which one should I get? And I was recommended the MPower, which honestly I would have selected anyway, because the other boards again didn't come with RAM and a CPU, and they were slightly cheaper, but like 3770K still go for like 50 euros, and they were not 50 euros cheaper, plus I still get RAM with this. So I decided for the MPower, which in my opinion, you know, people have said, yeah, MSI boards before X99 are like not the best for extreme overclocking, but I'm like, I've used this thing for a bit. Like, my DDR3 overclocking expertise is basically non-existent, but I have gotten this to clock at least 2400 stable. I haven't gotten it to 2600 yet, and I don't know if that's a limitation of the board, CPU, or the RAM that I'm using, but so far 2600 hasn't worked for me. 2400 was pretty easy to get working though, and yeah, so like, apparently it's supposed to be better than the Z77X UP7, because apparently that one gets stuck at 2200, so it's like at least not trash. yeah. And with all that out of the way, I guess we can just take a closer look at the board itself now. I haven't taken a look at the VRM yet. I have a suspicion as to what this is using. Well, I'm pretty sure it's a 12-phase VRM because it has these little LEDs here on the side, which you may know from some lightning cards that MSI made, where they just have like an LED that indicates like if the phase is running. Like the 580 Lightning and 680 Lightning and 7970 Lightning, they've had this. And this also exists on this board, and well, there's 12 LEDs, so this is probably a 12-phase V-Core, and it says Diamos something, so it's probably using Diamoses. But apart from that, I don't really know anything about the VRM, and I guess let's actually just take the heatsink off. Rip. Because this should be pretty easy to remove. Should have used like shorter screws for the CPU mounts, but I kinda don't have any. Like this is my version of low cost water block mounting, because I only have one proper water block mounting kit that I don't feel like detaching every single time I wanna swap out a motherboard for a bit. So I'm just using these long M2 screws and some washers and nuts to just make a very low cost water block mount that has like no backplate. Okay, so that should be the... oh no, actually those two also need to go. Oh, those are different screws. Those are... I think a different screwdriver. Yeah, like the VRM heatsink on this is like quite substantial for like what CPUs you can put in this, because this is basically the most power hungry CPU you can put in this, and it draws like what, 70 watts, at least at stock. Oh, the MSI ripped thermal pad issue returns. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was expecting. So those are at least Diamos. They might be power stages, but probably aren't. And let's take a look at that. So, what are these? Renesas. 2655. Okay, I know these ones. They are not stellar Diamoses. They are actually pretty meh Diamoses, but it does have 12 of them. So these are some dual FETs. That's probably like VCCSA, VCCIO, like some minor rail. So those two phases are that probably, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then probably another +2 for iGPU or whatever. Like, yeah, because this is before Intel had a VCC in on Haswell, so this is just an actual V-Core, so it needs an external iGPU VRM as well. So that's probably what those last two phases are. And so the Renesas 2655. We've seen these before on the Gigabyte GTX 780 Ti Windforce. And also one of my GTX 780s. And these Diamoses are not that great. They are rated for 40 amps and they have pretty awful efficiency. Like they kick out 9 watts of heat or maybe even 11 watts of heat. I don't quite remember it, but like both values are pretty dang bad at 40 amps output. So these are not very good Diamoses. The reason why I don't actually have a problem with this on this board is because we have 12 of them. That 780 Ti had 8 and that 780 had 6. And considering that this draws like maybe half the power of that 780, it has it draws half the power and has like twice the VRM on it. And with this heatsink, it's gonna be fine. Like these Diamoses, like actually like 40 amp, like these are like gonna run way below half current spec. Like these DRMOSs are actually, like this VR might be too big. At least for running the CPU at stock. If you run the CPU overclock, it's probably like more closer to like 50% current rated. But like the with 12 of these phases and the CPU only drawing like 70 watts when it's at stock, well actually it probably draws closer to 95 if you like run a heavy test. But like when I was like, actually was that an impact? I don't know. I ran something on it and it pulled 75 watts. Like 75 watts with 12 phases, you might actually be running the DRMOSs at such a low current that like just the switching makes the VRM less efficient than it could be if you just had less and ran them closer to 50% current, because they would be more efficient there. But like once you overclock this, that's gonna be fine. Like, yeah, the VRM is actually it does kind of look like a VRM that you would get on a board today. It's just like not using the components you would get today. Also, the PWM controller is a UP1618A, which I'm not actually too sure. Is this the same one that they have on the GTX 580 Lightning? Because they have a very similar one. I don't know if the part number is exactly the same, but it's like basically it looks exactly like that. And it's also a 12-phase controller. Actually it might be a 16-phase controller. And they're just splitting it off because I don't see like what's this 2-phase running off of? Like, I don't see another PWM controller on this. Is this a 16 phase? Like, there's nothing here. There's no controllers. Nothing. This might actually be like a 16 phase, because I remember there was like some ancient super high phase count controller, and then we had a bunch of years where the highest thing you could get was 8 phases, and then like relatively recently with like around B550 we got like 14 and 16 phase controllers again. So this might be that controller actually, because I think it used this package as well. So that's interesting. Also what's interesting is they also use the same DRMOSs on the memory VRM. So yeah, it's another one of those boards. I think I remember this from Gigabyte. I think it was actually the Z77 UP7. Where Gigabyte, Gigabyte used IR3555s for that one, I think. Those are, like, way better than these DRMOSs. And, you know, like, if you already put, like, this many of them in your main VRM, it's probably cheaper to just keep using them for other things on the board as well, because you get a bulk discount than just sourcing different DRMOSs. Though then they still use those dual NFETs here, so, I don't know. But they are using DRMOSs for the memory VRM, which, like, it's DDR3, not DDR4. I don't know how significant voltage regulation is for DDR3, but I don't think you need DRMOSs for this. I think, like, discrete MOSFETs would be fine. But yeah, you get 2 phases with DRMOSs for what I don't actually know if both of these are for memory, but I don't know what else would be. Like, this is probably input filtering from the 24 pin. This is probably, actually, what is this? I don't know if this is it, but yeah, that's interesting choice. Okay, let's talk about like features of the board. Well, you get power and reset button, and you get this OC Genie thing, which I think is yet another one of those mostly useless. No, actually, no, it isn't. Yeah, so I assume this is like one of those auto overclock things, like you press it and it, like, I don't know, sets your CPU clock 10% higher or something like that, which for an extreme overclocking board is kinda useless, because like those boards are really meant for, like, you know, actually overclocking and not just pressing a button. But actually remember in the BIOS seeing an option for setting an OC Genie profile, so you could like boot up the system at like stock speeds and then press this button and have it like hot apply your settings, if I understand it correctly, which is kind of interesting. Like, this would be useful if you want to do like CPU Z validations, like you or like just generally stuff where like your CPU or RAM is really close to the edge of stability and you like run a benchmark, but then still have to take a screenshot. You just push this button, and it goes back to stock, and then it's no longer gonna crash on you while you take the screenshot. So this is actually probably useful. We have voltage checkpoints here, which, well, I didn't get any accessory with this. I assume there was like some stuff to plug in here. This is, you know, it's a fairly standard feature on a lot of overclocking boards. You can like plug in here and then like technically with the multimeter read certain voltages off the board. Like, yeah, it's, you know, it's a nice to have. I have never actually used this, because usually how this reads is just like, it reads like off the output of the VRM, and if you want to know what the actual vCore at your CPU is, it's like reading up the VRM is not gonna like give you an actual good value. So these are like, these are nice to have, but I wouldn't like rely on them for super precise voltage monitoring. Then you get a supplementary 6-pin power connector. This board does support SLI and Crossfire. Probably, does it? I don't actually know if it does 3-way Crossfire. It probably does, because Crossfire only needs 4 lanes. Actually, does it do 3-way SLI? Because like both of these slots are X8 physically. Like, there are switches here. So if this is a physical 8, I actually, how does this work? Because like, you have 16 here, and if you plug a card into this, both of these turn into 8x. So where do you get another 8x from for this one? Because the chipset is only 4x. So like, could you actually 3-way? Because SLI needs 8 lanes. I actually know, maybe like sometimes you get like physical 8x slots that are actually only 4x electrically for some reason. Actually, yeah, I think this is the case, because if you look closely, you see the pins exist, but there's actually only like actual traces going to the first 4 lanes, and then the others, like the pins are there, but there's nothing actually connecting to them. So this is like a physical 8x, but electrically 4x. So this is gonna do dual SLI, 2-way SLI, and 3-way Crossfire. And then actually, like, this is connected to those switches. So I'm not too sure if this is actually from the chipset, or if this just like does 8x, 4x, 4x if you populate all 3. Because running Crossfire through the chipset can have problems, from what I heard. I've never... Have I ever run Crossfire, actually? No, I don't think I did. So, yeah, I have no experience about this. Then the next thing, we have a postcode right here, which, I gotta be honest, is probably the least good place to put it. Like, you know, I know about the debate of, like, postcode should go here, or postcode should go here. Generally, I prefer postcode here, because of how my test bench is oriented, but I fully understand the argument of people who say postcode go here. My problem with postcode here is, so if you populate, let's just grab a random card I have here. If you populate the 16x slot, do you see the problem? Like, unless you're looking at it directly from above, you're not gonna be able to read this. So, yeah, like, I guess it's not too big of an issue if you do like RAM or CPU centric things, because you can just like plug like a low power card into like one of these slots. But if you like run a proper GPU on this, it's basically gonna obscure the postcode from view, which is not ideal. Like, this is a pretty unfortunate position for a postcode. Like, this is actually not that great. The 6-pin is in a great spot. Like, for example, on the Unify, the 6-pin is right over here. Which, well, if that board did support multi-GPU, would be pretty bad, because, like, you know, if you plug a GPU into a slot, you can no longer plug the 6-pin in, and the 6-pin exists to, like, provide more power for multi-GPU setups. But like, so the 6-pin is a good spot. This probably isn't. I would prefer it if it was either here or there. This is not great. We have an angled USB 3.0, which I'm just pointing out because I wasn't aware that MSI did this as early as Z77. I just like having these angled because the USB 3.0 cable is a massive pain in the ass to route anywhere when it like sticks up. So I just like this. Then we have 6 SATA ports with this connect your SSD to the native SATA 6GB ports, SATA 1, SATA 2 to unleash the extreme performance. I don't quite know what this means. I guess the other SATA ports are 3 gigabits a second, is what this implies. I don't know. You have dual BIOS on this, so you this is the implementation that Gigabyte should have done, but you know, Gigabyte is Gigabyte, and they have the 2 switches. But so this is, you have 2 BIOS chips, and you just have a switch. You don't have a stupid button like you have on Asus that only works in certain phases of the post process, and you don't have 2 switches on Gigabyte, which you first have to like select the first have to select single BIOS mode and then the BIOS switch. No, you literally just get a BIOS switch to select if the A BIOS or B BIOS is active. Good job, MSI. This is how to do it. Then we have a switch labeled switch 1 that I have no idea what it does. It might be a clear CMOS switch. I don't know. You have a clear CMOS jumper right here. I do not know what the switch does. I didn't get a manual with this board, and so I have no idea. I'm just going off of clues of like what's on the board. I tried pressing this. I didn't notice anything. So yeah. And that pretty much is like the special features already. That basically leaves the rear I/O, which is surprisingly good for like a board as old as this. Like that's a lot of USB 3.0. Like just in general, that's a lot of USB. Like you have boards these days that have more than that, but like I remember when I got my first PC, it was a B75 board, so like the cheaper variant of this platform. And that thing had 2 USB 3.0 ports, and that was like a big thing. This has 6, and then another. These ones actually seem to be somewhat special because I've noticed that if you plug something into the USB 3.0 ports, they sometimes don't tend to pick up while you're in the BIOS. So these 2 you probably want to put your peripherals into. You also, of course, have a PS2 port, like you have on most overclocking focused boards, because if you want to run Windows XP, USB drivers sometimes non-existent, so you run PS2. Then we have these 2 things. I have no idea what they do. Genuinely don't. I don't have a manual of this. You get Ethernet, you get one sort of optical output, and DisplayPort and HDMI because of the iGPU and standard audio. And then you also have this light thing, which I, again, also don't know what it does because I didn't get a manual of this. Anyway, so that's the board, I guess. And basically now I just want to ramble about some RAM. Because that's the RAM I got with it. So, the seller I got this from said that it's 2400 RAM, in air quotes. Now, neither of these RAM kits have a rating of 2400. I can confirm that at least this one can run 2400 though. So, this is Corsair Vengeance, the big heat spreader variant. I also have some other Vengeance sticks that are like Vengeance LPX. And these are, you know, fairly generic DDR3, like 1600, 999, 24, 1.5 volts. They are also 4 gigabit single rank. So, pretty basic memory. But, you know, as always, Corsair lists the version number, and 4.24, so first 4 is Samsung, 2 means 4 gigabit, and 4 means the 4th revision. They do count 0, so 0 is A, 1 is B, and so on. So by the version number, and also confirmed by me taking the heat spreaders off and checking, this is Samsung 4 gigabit eDie. This is not the same Samsung 4 gigabit eDie that I overclocked before, because this is DDR3, the other's DDR4. Those are still different chips. And this stuff, there's not a whole lot known about it. Like the DDR3 IC thread, Jesus Christ, actually doesn't list these chips at all. And then the DDR3 overclocking guide by Eden does list them as only being found on OEM sticks. These are obviously not OEM sticks, these are Corsair engines. And, well, but what is known about the chip is that apparently this stuff can overclock quite well. Like, apparently this can do up to 2933. I've had it at 2400 because, well, I'm just starting out with this platform. I have no idea how to get this platform clock any high. I also don't know if maybe, you know, you just need Z97 or something to get clocks that high, because if the Z77 XUP7 gets stuck at 2200, then maybe this being 2400 is just the maximum that it does. But again, I don't know enough about DDR3 overclocking yet to really, like, judge the board and how good it is at overclocking. But apparently these chips can do 2933 if you get a good one. Which I guess is nice that I have some DDR3, because 2933, that's like a decent speed for DDR3 as far as I know. Like I think DDR3, the sort of max you can really achieve is like 3200-ish. And like DDR3 3200, I don't know what it's equivalent to, but I think it's more equivalent to like DDR4 5000. So that would be pretty, like, getting 2933 would be like pretty decent. That would be like DDR4, I don't know, 4600, something like that. And these chips being able to do that, yep, that's pretty nice. These are still not like bench relevant because apparently the timings suck. But, you know, given that this is just a random DDR3 kit I ended up with, pretty decent. And then I also have these. The problem with these is I have absolutely no idea what these are. So the only thing I do know about them is that these are dual rank, also 4 gigabit, so these are actually 8 gigabyte sticks. And that's everything I know. Like, the sticker doesn't list anything about them, and the SPD profile on these is literally empty. Like, it says they're made by HyperX or Kingston, and it says the JEDEC spec, and that's it. It does not list any RAM manufacturers, they do not have any XMP on them, like, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And the chips themselves are rebranded too, so I took the heat spreaders off, they are rebranded as Kingston C9 something. Absolutely no idea what these are. Some people suggested that the C9 could stand for Micron C9, or Micron 4 gigabit Rev C. But that's unconfirmed, and we actually have no idea which part of the rebranded Kingston part number actually, you know, means anything. It could just be like a serial code for like the manufacture date for all we know. So this kit, I have absolutely no idea what these do. The JEDEC spec on these is actually quite high, it's 1866. But again, no XMP, and I have absolutely no idea who even made these chips. Like, they could be Samsung, Nanya, Elpida, PowerChip, Micron, Hynix, I have no idea. Now, like, historically, like, HyperX kits used to include Micron or Hynix chips, but again, that still basically doesn't narrow it down at all, because the Hynix and Micron make many different chips. Like, DDR3 compared to DDR4 has so many different chips that exist, and because there's no like single best chip on DDR3 like it is for DDR4 with Samsung 8GB B-die, a lot of them can actually be pretty good. So yeah, so as the potential with these, I have absolutely no idea. And yeah, I guess I'm gonna test them. As it comes to other DDR3, I tested the Nanya 2GB G-die that I overclocked before on like a locked CPU. Those tend to suck because apparently they can do 2400, mine got stuck at 2200. And then I also have some Nanya 4GB C-die that I didn't test, and some Micron 2GB Rev E, which I also didn't test. And then I also have some Micron 4GB stuff that I don't know what it is. I think it's also Rev E, that I only have one single stick of, that I also didn't test. So like I have my DDR3 collection is actually like getting decently big. The difference to my DDR4 collection being that a lot of my DDR4 I went out to specifically buy a certain chip, whereas my DDR3 is just like whatever I ended up with randomly. But at least like this stuff, even though it is single rank, which as far as I know kind of sucks for DDR3, like as far as I know in DDR3 you just want to have dual rank, because apparently having more ranks on DDR3 isn't as big of a load on the memory controller as DDR4, but like I didn't test that myself, I just heard people say that. So like I guess these might be good for just like high frequency stuff, but like from what like apparently the timings on these suck, and they are single rank, so the actual performance is not gonna be that great. Yeah. As for how good my 3070K is, I have no idea. I have actually not tried overclocking this yet. That might be a video later, it might be a live stream later. I don't know. We'll see. Like, my plan is still to get like a bucket full of 2500Ks and mess with those. I'm also still undecided if I want to delid this one. Like, I could delid it and liquid metal it. That would probably help it for ambient overclocking, because I did notice even on water cooling it went into like 70 degrees while just running memory stress tests. So like the thermal paste under this IHS seems to not be that great. So I was thinking maybe liquid metal this one, but the problem is if I liquid metal it, like I do those as like permanent installations. I do seal the IHS back up after it. And that basically puts it off the table for extreme overclocking. And I'm not entirely decided yet if I want to extreme overclock my 3770K with like my phase change unit, or if I'm just gonna do 2500Ks. So I'm not totally decided if I want to liquid metal this yet, because like if you didn't know, liquid metal at temperatures below 0 just kind of stops working. Like you do need normal thermal paste if you want to go below 0. Liquid metal just it just loses its thermal conductivity if you go to that temperature. So because my liquid metal installs are like permanent, like my 8700K and also my 6700, they have liquid metal on them, and the IHS is silicon glued back shut, and those CPUs will probably never get like extreme overclocking below 0 because of that. So yeah, I'm not entirely decided yet whether to delete this one or not. I'm probably not gonna delete it for now, until I have like more overclockable CPUs for the socket, because the only other one I have is like my i5 3570, like my very first CPU. That's of course not a K. So yeah, so I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna look out for like cheap 2500Ks that are disposable, that I can just blow up, do whatever I want with, and I'm gonna do it with this board, because seems decent to me. And like the choice between this, an Asus, and an ASRock board, this is probably the most painless BIOS experience. Like I just really like MSI BIOS, because this thing, the BIOS from this thing and my B550 Unify X basically works the exact same way, despite this thing being 10 years old and the Unify X still being in current production. As far as I know, actually. Like, I think there's like a B550 refresh going on. But yeah, like, so these two motherboards are like 10 years apart, and if you know how to use the BIOS on one of them, you know how to use the BIOS on the other one. Which is why MSI BIOS is probably my favorite. The new Gigabyte BIOS is also decent, but MSI just has that consistency. Just like, because Gigabyte, like, you know, there's boards that have the new Gigabyte BIOS, and then there's boards that doesn't, and the boards that don't, they have the old Gigabyte BIOS, and the old Gigabyte BIOS is kind of shit, so, yeah, but like MSI BIOS, I just really like MSI BIOS, it's my favorite. It's just, like, I don't know if it's true for these older boards, but like for current gen, I always just like, when people ask me, oh, what board should I get? It's just like, do you want to overclock, or do you just want something that's like reliable? And when they say they want something reliable, I just always recommend MSI, because like it just works. And if they want something that's like very overclockable, like on B550, I recommend Gigabyte. And then depending on other platforms, like I don't know, for Coffee Lake, probably Asus. Whatever is the best for that given platform. Anyway, the video is quite long now, and I will finish now. So yeah, I have a good DDR3 overclocking board now. Like, I mean, I've had my Rampage 2 Gene before, but it's x58, and I don't even have like a 3-DIMM DDR3 kit. And also, it's a Gene. Like, if you didn't know that, those things have like the Gene on the x58 has, so those are more power hungry CPUs, and it has a much worse VRM than this. And even the more powerful version of the Gene's VRM is known for spontaneously exploding. So that's why I haven't really used the Gene that much. This thing though, despite the diamonds on this being not that great, it's gonna be fine. So yeah, you're gonna be seeing this more often. I'm gonna like play around with this. Yeah, I just wanna do like more CPU stuff, and I think Ivy Bridge, Sandy Bridge, probably fun to play with, and I might, you know, if it's fun, I might also get a Z97, maybe some LGA 1156. Don't know. We'll see. Maybe also some AM3, but like those tend to be quite expensive still for some reason. But yeah, I do want to do more CPU stuff. Like, I have enough graphics cards to last me for months, so I wanna. My bad purchasing decisions have now to expand to DDR3 and adjacent platforms. Anyway, I wanted to end this like 2 minutes ago. Goodbye.